Okay, guys. Good morning, and I'm excited to share this lesson with you today because what I've been noticing when I've been grading especially the poetry, is that there are some things that we've just completely missed, and I don't mean every one of us, and I don't mean entirely missed. Some of us are getting closer than others, but especially on the poetry documents. Let me show you what I mean. If you will remember, you guys had a questionnaire that goes with the poems, and so you'd read the poems and then you'd annotate, and then you have this series of 7 questions that you ask that you answer, and the the first one I want to go over with you is called antecedent scenario. Okay, so we're going to go over that today, and I'm going to give you a chance to redo some work and get your grades up. So that's really the ultimate goal of this, is to help those of you who are still struggling with this, and help those of you who are either not quite there or getting there but still struggling to understand it just a little bit, to be able to redo some of these assignments. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. First of all, we got to talk about that word antecedent. Okay, so I wanted to show you this new thing that I created on the digital classroom. So I gave us 4 walls. Rooms have 4 walls, and on one of these walls, I have a bunch of the words that you guys learned this quarter. This, not just this quarter, but this semester, um, on the word wall. And if you click on the word, it actually opens up to a website where you can go back over the skill. It's not a website per se, it's a Google search, but it still lets you go back over kind of what we talked about with that skill. All right, and then I've been starting to work on the next room, and it's going to start with this one prefix, the word root, anti. And anti is not anti. So anti means against or not, but ante means before. You may have heard this word used in the word antebellum, like an antebellum house is a house built before the Civil War. Um, there's also a thing called an ante room, which is a room that you go in like to take your boots off and your snow, and that comes before you get into the main part of the house. So an ante means before. Okay, all right. If you will go to modules, you're going to open up the antecedent scenario practice, and I have that open up right here. Okay, so the first thing we need to write down is that ante means before. All right, this is how we're going to do that. Now, I want you to think about, if ante means before, what an anteceding event is. If ante means before, what do you think an anteceding event is? Or the word that was used in the paper is an anteceding scenario. I think it's actually an antecedent scenario. What is that? Okay. Go ahead and pause and try to figure out what that is. So, an antecedent scenario or an anteceding event is something that happens before you actually sit down and write a poem. So, it's the thing that causes the poem to be written. All right. So, I want to show you guys a poem. I'm just going to put it up on the screen, let it sit there. You guys go ahead and read it. Wings. Alejandro was a monarch, damaged chrysalis left behind. I swung my net and missed him, his wings too wet to fly. Now, back to the kaleidoscope, vital fluid pumping hard, wings flapping for the flight ahead, worth it all despite the scars. Okay, so what I want you to think about with this is, why did the poet write this poem? What happened before that caused this person to sit down, put pen to paper, and write these words down? I want you to pause, and I want you to think of 3 possible reasons. If you can. If you can only think of one possible reason, that's okay too. going to list that right here on this sheet. Now I want to tell you why the poem was actually written. So, I actually wrote this poem. So if you were in the collective, you probably had a little bit of a heads up about what this was about. But we lost a student a while back, and it was a student that had come to meet me and was interested in like doing better in his life, and wanted to be in my class. And I was going to work on that for him. And then before that got even started, um, he was shot and killed. So I wrote this because I feel like, my students are very, very special. Butterflies are very, very special. And this one student in particular just really stuck with me. And it made me think about not just him, but all of my students. That's why I use this word kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope is a collection of butterflies. And I had to do a lot of research for this poem to, know some more things about butterflies and how they work. But that's what happened. That's why I sat down and wrote this poem. So, but what the point I want to make to you about the anteceding scenario is that none of you had to write down that a person was a teacher and a student was shot and this was their reaction, right? No one needed to get that in order to do this work. What you're thinking about are all of the possible things that could have happened to cause this speaker to write this poem. Okay? So here's what we're going to do today. Now that you understand, hopefully, what this anteceding scenario is, or this antecedent scenario is, we're going to go and we're going to get one of these poems that you've done before. So I'm going to pick Green Light Go, the most recent one, the reading response from the other day. Okay, here's what you're going to do today. You're going to go find one of the poems that we've done. Okay, if you're paying attention today, you're going to get a little bit extra from me in this lesson. So I'm going to grab Green Light Go. I'm just going to grab the poem and I'm just going to paste it right below here. Okay. Now, that just shows me which one I picked. I'm going to put that number 1 back. All right, so there's the poem I picked. Now, what I want to do this time is I want to think through this poem. So let me just read through it. To be a disco ball dangling in a storefront window in the sun with a cage on it. To be 2 and 3 disco balls, downtown McAllen, spangles of sun and water that grew tangerine skins late February, pink bottle brush nostrils, buff-bellied hummingbirds. To be mirrors and hexagonal combs, Mexican honey wasps, larvae, paper, wax. To make geometry without vocabulary. To be live music, take off your jacket, girl, wear your tank top. It's 90 degrees. To be a green light go downtown Corpus after cars and trucks zooming on beach sand before hot tubs. To be an orange sun driving from Enzaldua's grave. To be a cactus bloom fuchsia, opuntia, Laguna Atascosca, Laguna Madre. To be a watering hole, a mud chimney air vent for crawdad water tunnels. To be a silver lizard run over by cars, a swatch of river on asphalt. To be a bolt loosened from the border wall. To be a peso falling out of a cooing quorum of lotteria cards signing a resolution. To be a goose perched on top of an abandoned sink in a yard in a town that fords the river. To be the woman stretched on her beloved's grave, returned after decades. To be a kid in juvie. To be her guardian, the judge, the PO. To be the letters she writes, the words that matter more than food, almost as much as music and more than makeup. Nearly sun seen through the mandatory skylight imagined by the control room monitor. To be El Shalon, the last hand-drawn ferry on the river, its ropes pulled by pilots. To be a passenger, almost on the other side. All right, so the question becomes, what has been happening before this poem starts? What has disturbed the status quo and set the poem in motion? If you don't know what status quo means, it just means like the normal operation of things. So if things are going status quo, they're going the way they normally go, okay? So what has been happening before the poem starts, and what has disturbed the status quo? What has happened to make the poem be written, okay? So I'm going to make my best guess. This may or may not be right. I don't have the poet here. I can't ask him or her. So I have to think about it like just using the poem. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, this poem appears to be written by someone returning home to a border town in Texas. Maybe they have been away a long time. And now that they're back, they're thinking about all the things they love about home. That's how you do this, guys. What I'm going to let you do today is redo any of these that you feel like you could do better on. So what I want you to do is go back through your assignments, look at your grades as you're getting them. Go back through them before I've even looked at them again, because I'm going to go back through and double check everything anyway, just to make sure that nothing got missed while I was gone. Go back through there and change your answers. That's fine. And resubmit them, and I'll look at them again. It's not a big deal. Especially go back over the one on the summative and resubmit that, especially if you didn't get all the points for that. This is not nearly as complicated as it sounded. Those words, antecedent, scenario, are big words, and so it makes it seem like it's something a lot harder than it is. So that's it for today. What I want you to do for the rest of the period is finish this sheet for yourselves and then turn it in, and then you can work on redoing any assignment that you want to redo, and also anything that you've missed. And then you can also work on independent reading, and if you're done with all of that, you can free write.